Hello everyone, how are you? I hope you're having a good day, and this video is about sound. You might be thinking we do not need this video. After all, we all know what sound is, right? We use it every day. So if I ask you what is sound, what would you say? A common answer when someone asks what is sound might be to reply, it's what you hear. But why do you hear it? What is it? And what is happening in the world when sounds take place? In this video, we're going to look at the physics of sound, what it actually does in the world. And in a later video, we will look at the biology of how we as humans hear and make sounds. So, when someone makes a sound, they cause a vibration in the air. Physics likes to refer to vibrations as oscillations, but they are really the same meaning. The vibration shakes the air particles, and this creates a wave pattern, and sound really is a wave in the air. The wave pattern can move through the air and it can go to other people. It enters their ear, and this is where it is turned into sound. Vibrations can move through other objects too, liquids or even solids. But we normally think about sound at first as moving through air because most of the sound we hear comes to us through the air. Here we can see an old diagram of a sound wave. The bell rings and the waves spread out through the air and hit the person's ear. We'll talk more about these waveforms in a few minutes. There are two types of waves that we need to talk about though. Waves move through space and they move in a certain direction, and this is called the direction of propagation of a wave. This is usually easier to see in waveforms like the one on the right-hand side, and the wave oscillates in this case perpendicular to the direction of propagation. These are called transverse waves. So in the diagram, you can see that the wave is moving along the x-axis, but the blue wave is vibrating up and down in the y-axis, and the red wave is vibrating left and right in the z-axis. So these vibrations are perpendicular to the x-axis. This is a transverse wave. Sometimes the wave oscillates in the same direction as the direction of propagation, and these are called longitudinal waves. Sound waves are longitudinal waves, so let's look at those in a bit more detail. So sound waves are longitudinal, and this means that they vibrate the air in the same direction as the direction of propagation. The waves are made of high pressure and low pressure areas in the air. These high pressure areas are called compressions, and the low pressure areas are called rarefactions. And for this reason, we often hear sound referred to as a compression wave or simply a pressure wave. In the picture we saw before, the dark areas in this picture are the compressions and the lighter areas are the rarefactions. In the dark areas, the air particles are pushed together and so the pressure is slightly higher. And in the lighter areas, because there are fewer air particles there, the pressure is lower. But longitudinal waves are often easier to see using a slinky spring stretched out. Here we can see the woman on the left is stretching out the slinky spring, and she is moving her hand backwards and forwards in the same direction as the slinky spring. The compression wave will move down the slinky spring, and you can see there are areas where the coils are very tight, and these are the compressions, and then there are areas where the coils are more stretched out, and these are the rarefactions. If you have a slinky spring, I suggest you get it out and try this for yourself. You can more easily see the wave moving up and down the spring as the compressions bounce forward and back along the length. Something else we need to talk about is pitch and volume. Sound can change in many different ways, and two of the most basic ways are pitch and volume. You probably know volume already. It is a measure of how loud a sound is. Volume is formally measured in decibels. Pitch is the tone of a sound, how high or low the sound is, and pitch is measured in hertz. Kind of, as we will see in a minute. Volume and pitch are how we experience sounds, but physics describes waves differently, and so physics has a different way of thinking about sound. First, we will look at amplitude. In physics, the size of a wave is shown by the amplitude. The amplitude is the maximum movement of the wave from its center line. Here we can see two waves, and the blue wave has a large amplitude, the orange wave has a small amplitude. But they both make the same tone because their frequency is the same, as we will see on the next slide. In sound, the amplitude of the wave is connected to the volume of the wave. So which of these two waves do you think is making a louder noise? The louder noise is made by the blue wave because it has a greater amplitude. In the last slide, I mentioned the word frequency. Frequency tells us about the character of the wave. The frequency is how many wave crests are in a length of the wave. And so here we can see at the top a high frequency wave which has many wave crests, and then at the bottom a low frequency wave which has fewer wave crests in the same amount of space. This is also connected to another feature of waves called the wavelength. But in sound, the frequency of the wave tells us the pitch of a sound, how high or low it sounds to our ear. Which of these two waveforms do you think is creating the higher tone? No surprise for guessing that the higher tone is created by the high frequency wave. So what is wavelength? If we look at those frequency waves again, the wavelength is the distance from the start of a wave to the start of the next wave. So we go to the same point in the next wave. Here the arrows go from where the wave comes up to the center line until the next time it comes up to the center line. So we have one full cycle of up and down, and that is the wavelength. Frequency and wavelength are connected so that when wavelength goes up, frequency automatically comes down. This is called a reciprocal relationship, and they are very important in maths and physics. Also note that we don't have to start from the center line. We can measure our wavelength from any point in the wave as long as we go to exactly the same point in the next waveform. So here we can measure from the crest of one wave to the crest of the next wave, and the wavelength we will measure is exactly the same. Finally, let's just look at sound waveforms. The background to this video is this picture here, and this is an example of a sound wave. You might have seen it before, and given what we were talking about waveforms, you might wonder, why does it look so messy? Well, sound waves are messy because real sound is made of many different frequencies and amplitudes, and these waves are all added together on top of each other to make a waveform of real sounds. So, this sound shown in this blue waveform is a combination of many different waves, many different frequencies, and many different amplitudes. If a sound is fairly consistent, you will see repeated patterns even in a messy waveform like this. But if the sound is always changing, like someone speaking or music changing all the time, then you won't see the same patterns come up again and again. But those sounds are still made of individual waveforms, just like the ones we saw in the earlier slides. And that is the end of our first look at what sound is. I hope you've enjoyed this video. If you have, feel free to like it, subscribe, and ask any questions that you have in the comments. Like I said, there will be a follow-up video where we start to look at what sound is for humans and other animals. Why do we hear things? How do we hear things? And how do we make the sounds that we use to communicate with others? Thanks for watching, and bye for now.